Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Singapore Geospatial Festival 2021, an event that brings the international geospatial community together for co-located activities promoting the use of location-based and mapping innovation. This event is organized by GeoWorks, Singapore Land Authority Geospatial Industry Centre. Today, we are excited to have two speakers from GRAB. They are Jinal Fofia and Purnima Badrinath. Jinal and Purnima will be sharing on KartaView, an app that enables the collection of street-level imagery. If you have any questions, please leave them in the Q&A chat box and we will answer them at the end of the webinar. Thank you, and without further ado, I will hand over to Jinal. Jinal, please.
Thank you so much, Noor, and hello, everyone. Let me just share my screen. Give me a second. All right, I think all of you can see my screen. Awesome. I'm going to start presenting. So welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. I hope you have like some nice tea or something while we go through this entire session of photo mapping. I'm not sure how many of you are aware of or are already mappers. Would love to know that. Please do share your mapping stories on the chat. But while we do this, I think photo mapping has become an extremely popular way of mapping. And in this session, we take you through what one is like photo mapping and KartaView. KartaView is an application which allows you to record these photos and as a trail, and it is directly available on Openstreetmap, which is again an open source mapping crowdsourcing platform, which is used by over 6 million people across the globe. And you can use that information and map many intricate features, which is extremely hard to map otherwise. So before we start off, what's photo mapping? And this is not a perfect definition. I'd say it is something which we've come up with. I'm like, I often say that it's adding another dimension to mapping. And use your camera to remember stuff. Basically, like, when I'm going on the road, yes, I'm like, oh, there is a crossing here, and there is this, and then I have to go back, find that in the imagery and do it. And traditionally, we had multiple other ways. We had field papers where we would print the layout that was existing, and then use our like pens or pencils to add that information, and then come back home and or go back in field and then add that information and make the maps better. But is that is that enough? Like, is satellite imagery enough, right? Because apart from just seeing at the dimension that we see, I would say a 2D map, right? Like from satellite imagery, you can see the roads, and you can probably see some of like water bodies or buildings, but that limits. And this is what street level imagery comes into play, where you can add so much more just to it. You can add signs. You can see what's like, if you see here, you can see the turn lanes, you can see buildings, you can see what is happening. So it gives, and that is one of the reasons why I say that it gives another dimension to, and it gives another dimension to mapping. So as I said, satellite imagery is not just enough. So let me quickly do an introduction to KartaView. KartaView is an open source tool. At this point, Grab is supporting this tool, and it's available for everyone. You can download it on Apple Store or Play Store, and it's an easy app to use. And in this one, I'll give you a quick tutorial. I'd love for you all to go out and explore KartaView a little. Oh, sorry. Just a second. Okay. Can you all see me still? Okay. Yes. So I'd love for you all to, go and explore KartaView and, record some trails and add that on the map, and then you can see it. And the session will empower you to do that. Look into, it's easy to sign up. It's the screen. If you're already an OpenStreetMap user, you log in with OpenStreetMap because it makes it easy for you to upload the changes and add those references. There are some tips whenever you start. We have certain things that, best way to record. You don't necessarily, I'm sorry about this. Yeah. You don't necessarily need to, like if you have a car, you can go on a ride, but if you don't have one, you can just walk and still collect the imagery or the things that you're looking out for. And Extra tip is that, as I said, you don't need, you can just go hold your phone and landscape and collect the imagery. And I would suggest you, and this is a personal recommendation, is that we have like loads of imagery collected by all the volunteers across the world, and especially during the pandemic when we are not allowed, or when while we wait to go back to the new normal. This is a great way to go on and latch onto somebody's rides and visit some beautiful places on this in this world where people are just going collecting imagery, and it gives you a beautiful perspective. So as easy as it is, as you open the map, you'd see how many trails are collected by fellow people, and all you have to do is click on the camera button, and you can tap and record. And the preferred mode is to tilt to horizontally once until the line turns green, and then that's it. You look out and start moving. There are certain indicators on the phone, like when you see low GPS. I think when you go to places where there are tall buildings, there are certain chances that the GPX seems to be a little low. So one has to like move away for it until that, but the button becomes green. And once it is, it will tell you, are you riding, are you walking, and you can your journey to collect the imagery is ready. And then just click on start, and then explore your surroundings. And one thing is that you can record as many trips as you want. Just make sure that it contains, valuable assets. But I would also say that if you're going on a road trip and you want to just, capture this beautiful trail as such, please go ahead and do it. It's something which a lot of people do, and that helps in adding a lot more information on the map, where hidden trails. Some of them even add flora and fauna, so anything. And then stop recording once you think it's done, and now you can upload. So multiple recordings can be uploaded, and you can also have settings where you don't have to upload it on your data pack, but you can come home and upload it on your Wi-Fi. And then you can sit and binge watch all your trips wherever you're driving and relive every time you're doing. That's another thing which I've done. Like I've gone and recorded these, and then I sit back home and see them. And I have trips which were quite a few years old, but helps me to relive the memory. Um, and then upload them all. They disappear, and this is funny. It's I don't know if you've heard this, but it's like a very weird way of saying 2000 years later. It takes a little bit of time because these pictures are quite heavy, and it takes a little bit of time for process. So please be patient, but it will be there. And you just need to go to KartaView.org, log in, click on one of your trips, and you should just be able to play it. This is what the screen looks like. It shows the coverage, it shows the photos, the distance you've covered, and you get a point because obviously there's a leaderboard. Hint, hint. We'll get to that later, but there have been some amazing contributors across. But just by looking into this picture, you can see that there is a sidewalk, there's like a shed, so you can add all of these changes. Then you know which road goes where. There are sign tagging, there's like a marker, and it's very clearly seen, which makes it so much easier for anybody to add information on the map versus trying to look into from a satellite imagery and do it. So doesn't it look good? I'd say it looks awesome. And then you also have magnifying glasses on the screen, and then head over to extract data from your images at the emotion. And also, like, this is just a leaderboard, and you can see that there are people who have like 100,000 points. There have been people who are contributing, and this is not just specific to Singapore or Southeast Asia, but across the world. There have been a lot of people who are actively contributing and adding this information on the map. As they say that even though, like, to become a mapper, yes, you need to understand the nuances of map, but to collect this is as simple as you just need to put your device in and go and collect the imagery. But this imagery can be so useful for many things, such as mapping pedestrian ways, mapping wheelchair enabled places. um, I personally feel that a lot of our maps are not built to cater to the community. So having those in place would help us make that information so much more available, and the use cases are just so many. So before I stop, I will look out for your questions in the Q&A, and in case we do have more, I will try to answer them either during the session or post that. But feel free to please try this out. It's super simple. And in the end, we also have left our email addresses. So in case you have any questions, you can reach out to both of us, and we'd be happy to help you, on board, and hoping to see at least one of you on the leaderboard here. So I'll stop sharing and hand over the deck to Purnima, who is my colleague and who will be taking us a little more deep into mapping and how can we use these images to add information, and some tips and tricks and a lot more. So over to you, Purnima.
Thank you so much, Janal. Hi, everyone. I hope you're all doing really well. Just give me 1 minute to share my screen. I hope you're all able to see my screen. Okay.
Do you want to go to the present mode, the presentation mode?
Yeah. I'm hoping that you're all able to see my screen. Just giving a minute in case you do have any questions about KartaView and how to add images or procure images. Just add it in the chat for Janal to answer, and then once that is done, we can take it forward.
Oh, I think, Purnima, we can start. I guess folks are already excited for the next bit.
Awesome. So before we deep dive into a little bit more about mapping, I would really want to ask a little bit fun questions about mapping or the cities that we are so generally dealing with. So if anybody actually, I would love to have your answers on the chart. If you can actually recognize which city this is.
Hey, Purnima, I was just saying if you can go into the present mode, because we're seeing the slides, and I think that would just be easy for people to view.
1 second. I am in the present mode. I'm not sure why it's not showing. Just a second.
Oh, yes, we can see that. Yes.
Great. Anyone on the chat, please do let us know which city this is. If you already recognize, then great.
Anyone? Okay, we have Noor, who says it's Singapore Marina Barrage.
That's awesome. It is Singapore. Okay, the next one. Can you guess which city this is? Anyone?
We have one answer, which is the Klang Valley.
No, it's not Singapore. It's Kuala Lumpur.
Okay. Yeah, KL.
Awesome. Anyone who knows which city this is, or at least can find out the monument that's there? Anything is fine.
Stephen, you were right. It was KL, Kuala Lumpur.
Mm-hmm.
But this one, yeah, I'm waiting for some more answers. Maybe you can give some clues.
One of the densest cities in the world, and it's very well known for its traffic, or at least like the second most populated, traffic populated city in the world.
Noor is saying it's Jakarta. Is that right?
That's awesome. It is Jakarta.
Awesome.
And,
2 out of 2, Noor.
right. The last one. Anyone can guess this?
Maybe a clue.
It's also a very popular destination. It's known for its food.
Stephen says it looks familiar. That's
Any guesses, the top of your mind? Any guesses that you can think of which city this might be?
okay. I think we have to move to the next slide. So
So it's Hanoi, by the way.
it's Hanoi.
If
With
actually
nice.
you predicted, then that's amazing. But yeah, the reason why we did the spotted series was also to give you kind of an overview as to how the cities are built and what kind of information can we get from just an overview of the city. And not it's not much with the satellite imagery, right? Because you can't infer a lot of important information from just the satellite images, and that's one of the reasons why KartaView or the KartaCam becomes so important, because it'll give us street level imagery and it'll give us a very good idea as to how the streets are built, what are the attributes that are there, and how we can actually maximize the level of navigation mapping we can do. So without further ado, let's go to the mapping for an introduction. And to give a very brief and a very easy definition, mapping is representing the world features in a two-dimensional format. And so now it's actually also three-dimensional format, right? So it's basically a way to understand what are the visual features of the world, what are you viewing from which perspective, and it's also adding features in a very easily recognizable format, right? So that's the process of mapping. And I'm sure you've all heard of Openstreetmap, which is the open source platform that we have for mapping. And it has millions of contributors across the world. There's so many people, so many community members who already joined Openstreetmap and who are contributing their knowledge about the localities onto the map, making sure that it is up to date and it's one of the most recent updated maps of the world. It was started in 2005 in London by Steve Coast, and if you do not have an OSM account, it's actually very, very easy to open it. Just go to the link and click on the sign up option right here. And when you click on sign up option, you can just give your email and then your display name, whichever ID you want to give your as your OSM ID, and the password. And then when you sign up, you just get an email to activate your OSM account, and then you're pretty much done. So once you're signed up and you activated your OSM account, you can just go to login and put your credentials and you're free to map. That's pretty much it. That's how easy it is to map on OSM. And once you choose the area of your choice in the editor of your choice, you're all set for mapping. And I will show which editor you can choose and how you can map a little further down the road in this presentation. So the process of mapping is basically for us to understand. Even before we get to mapping, we just want to make sure that we have our profile set, right? So it's actually pretty easy to do profile set as well, just like how you created an account. Once you're done and once you're logged in, you should be able to see your username right here. So you can click on that and you should see the options, which is dashboard, your messages, profile, settings, and everything. So just go to my settings and you should be able to see account settings and authorization settings that you need to apply for your own account. And then when you go to my profile, you should be able to see your profile and whatever you've added. So if you want to add more information on your profile, you can always click on edit profile, and then you can add your own description as to what you do and why are you on OpenStreetMap and what are the things that you can actually map or you're interested in mapping. You can choose your own avatar and also your location of mapping so that people are familiar as to which localite or where you are from and where you are comfortable with mapping. So once that is done, you're giving more information to the community, and also letting having like a way for them to understand who you are as a mapper as well. So that's one of the few things that we recommend you to do whenever you're actually mapping, because it'll give you like a very good insight for different community members, and also it'll help you understand different community members as well. Now that you know little basics of OpenStreetMap, before we deep dive into the process of mapping, we want to understand what are the data models, or what are the points or components that are making OpenStreetMap data uh, as a model, right? So we have like all map data is divided into three major components over here. It's node, way, and relations. And the nodes, all of the things that come under nodes are, you have your POI, which is transit stops, hotels, restaurants, any landmark, and things like that. Those all come under nodes, where you are just adding one point and you're giving them an attribute. That's node. And your roads, railways, power lines, electric poles, all of that comes under ways. So you're adding roads for navigation. Those are actually coming under the component of a way. An area is a combination of node and ways, and you're actually with buildings, water bodies, parks, swimming pools, tennis courts, all of those come under area. And when you have like a turn restriction or a bus route or a traffic enforcement camera, where you're clubbing two ways, or one node and two ways, or things like that to form a relation, those actually come under the component of a relation. So this is the three major components of OpenStreetMap, and all of the data that you find on OpenStreetMap will fit into either one of these categories. And now that we know the categories of OpenStreetMap, we have two editors that we generally use to edit on OpenStreetMap. One is ID and the other one is JOSM. So ID is very simple because it's a web editor and you do not have to install any additional plugins, and it's very much aimed for beginners. And JOSM is an in-app editor. It is a little advanced. It's for faster but more cleaner mapping. And who uses JOSM is basically the expert mappers, because they're comfortable with mapping and they prefer faster mapping and lesser dependencies on the internet at all times. So with JOSM, what you can do is you can download a certain area, and then you can continue to map without internet. So after you're done mapping, you can actually upload it once you get your internet back. So it doesn't depend on internet at all times for your data to be mapped. So these are two major editors of OpenStreetMap. And before we go to a little bit of deep dive of how to map on ID, there's a little bit of best practices you need to follow when you're mapping on OpenStreetMap. Make sure that you always map real features, right? Never map anything that does not exist in the real world. For example, this teddy bear with like a juggling, like it's juggling teddy bear. So that is not a real feature. So these kinds of edits are not encouraged on OpenStreetMap. And whenever you're mapping anything, always validate before uploading to make sure that you're not adding anything wrong onto the map. And when you're uploading, you will get a change set comment dialog box on ID. So you can actually, give an explanation as to the edit that you've done, saying that I added a road in Singapore, or I added a restaurant in Singapore or Jakarta or anything. So just give a clear explanation as to what edit you're doing, so that the mappers are clear about what edit has been done, and it's easier to validate in case they come across your change set. And always use verified sources. Please do not use proprietary sources to map on an open platform. You can use Bing or Esri or Mapillary, OpenStreetCam, which is also now the KartaCam. Those are some verified sources that you can use to map on OpenStreetMap. And if you're unsure of any edit and you do not know what to do, or if you think that you might be wrong in this case, you can actually save or add a note on OpenStreetMap so that the community members can see that and help you out with any of your edits. All right, so now that we know like the basics of OpenStreetMap and what to deal with it, it's the process of mapping. So let me show you a very simple access to how you access in ID.
Just a reminder, folks, you can please do put your questions in the Q&A box or even on the chat, and we'd ensure that if you want, we could repeat certain steps as such.
Yes. All right, so this is basically how the ID platform looks, or the ID web editor looks. You can start by searching for the places that you would want to map, and it'll automatically open that. And you can see how to zoom in, zoom out using ID, and you can also show your own location wherever you're mapping from. You can actually directly open that location itself if you give the geolocation to this. And you have the map key where you know the legend of how the which attributes are in which color, so you can actually identify all of the attributes that are there on the map using the legend. And you can actually add a note right here with this option. So whenever you click on the location, you can actually make sure that you can add a note. And these are also some of the notes that have been added by the community members already. And you can also query features by zooming in and clicking on that particular feature, which is a question mark, and it will give you an idea as to what feature that is. And it'll also give you an idea as to what nearby features you can find within that place. It's taking a little bit of time, but yeah. So you can see the suburb, the country boundary, the island, and nearby features of that particular feature. And also the feature, what it is. It's Pine Island Expressway, the row suburb relation that's associated to that feature. You can query that using here. So this is how the ID platform in general looks. So when you have found out an area that you want to edit, you can always click on edit, and you can choose the editor that you would want to set up. So since we're not dealing with JOSM right now, I will not show that and confuse you a little bit more. So let's deal with edit with ID. And when you've zoomed in enough, you can click on that option, and you can show whichever place that you would want to edit with this particular place, right? So this is how ID generally looks with its edit option. And you have three feature that you can add, which I told you as the component that is on the map. So one is a point. So if you're adding a POI, the shortcut would be one, or you can just click on the point option. And wherever the POI is existing, you can confirm that using the street level imagery, and you can add it as a point. So when you add it as a point, you should be able to see the feature types that automatically comes up as a suggestion on ID. So you can click, if you're saying you're adding a cafe or a restaurant or something, just click on that, and you should be able to see all the tags. And you'll also see that there's a change, or a fork and a knife icon appears, so that it is highlighting that it is a restaurant. And you can click on this to add a tag, say name tag, and then just say that you know the name of the restaurant to be Doodles, and it shows up as a feature. That's how you add a point. And to add a road, basically, if you know that there is a highway or a footway or something like that that you would wish to add, you can always use the satellite imagery. And to usually what happens with ID is like your satellite imagery actually automatically opens up by itself. But if you wish to change anything to another satellite imagery that you're referring, probably Maxar or Maxar Beta, you can go to this option right here, which is the layer tab, or you can see the three squares. Just go to that, or click on the shortcut B, and you should be able to choose the imagery that you would wish to work with. And we would suggest you to choose the imagery that's the most clear, so that you can understand what are the features more clearly, and you can actually add those, right? So this is how you add a point. And if you're adding a line, so for example, I'm finding a way over here using the satellite imagery, right? And if I wish to add that particular road, then what I do is I go to the line option, or the keyboard shortcut is 2. And whenever you're adding a road, make sure that you're connecting to another road by automatic, so you don't cause any unconnected nodes or roads. So when you hover over the line right here, you should be able to see a light red highlight that appears on the road, which means that that road is being hovered, or the road is being clicked on. So once you click on it, it automatically forms a connection with the road, right? And then you can click on it and extend the road. And when you double click on it, the road actually will stop and then you can give the link as to what you think this particular feature is, right? So there are some suggestions from ID itself, but you can't find your road over here. You can always click major roads or minor roads option, and you should be able to see minor, residential, living street, service road, and the other tags that's available, and you can add that whichever is valid for this particular house or this particular street. By confirming with the imagery, which I'll show you in a bit how to do it, you can actually add a feature. And now to add the area is the next component of the map. So now to add the area, what you can do is click on area, or the shortcut is 3. And then I see a tennis court right here. So I'm going to trace that. And when I double click, I can stop tracing, and you should be able to see the features right here: land use features, residential area, or building features. And if you think it's a building or a garage or anything, you can just choose that particular tag. There's also an option to hide and enable data. So if you click on the option that's right below background settings, which is map data, the shortcut is F. You can see what data is being shown right now on OpenStreetMap data. You can also see the notes, and you can see the ones that are actually showing on the map features currently. So you can choose whichever feature you want to show or see on the map by enabling or disabling them all, and you should be able to see that there is a code option right here, right? So if you are getting like an option that you've done like a duplicated issue, then you can actually make sure that the wrong edit is removed, and you can see whichever edit is right here. And then if you wish to move that feature a little bit, you can click on that feature and then right click and choose the option move. So you can move it to exactly where that particular feature is. So the tag for this is leisure equals pitch. So this is how you add point, line, and area. I'll give you like a minute break. If you do have any questions about this, please do let me know.
While we think about it, I think it'll be a good time to launch a poll to see if any one of you have mapped on OpenStreetMap before. I'll be just publishing it, and
Yeah.
it would be very interesting to see how or what a lot of you folks have done. Have you mapped before or not?
Actually, there's a question from Stefan.
Oh, okay. I didn't see that.
Okay.
Okay, so Stefan has two questions while the other folks are mapping on, are contributing to the poll. We can go through the question. So I think he
Okay,
has
I
two.
show it. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Noor.
No, I mean, I am showing the question on the screen.
That's great.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
See? All right. Yeah.
Yes.
So he asked, sometimes he found that different aerial imagery sources from OSM are not quite aligned. How do you decide which alignment to use when digitizing?
Yeah, so I can take this question. I think we check with multiple imageries first of all. Like we have like two imageries that are actually valid and most recent at this point, which is Maxar and Esri. And we see like most of the edits, whichever the imagery that they've been chosen, you can actually see that it's matching to one imagery or the other at that point. That we choose, and there's also an option of setting offset on the imagery. So if the imagery is not aligning to the data at all, then we set a little bit of an offset, and we let the community know that this imagery is not aligning with the actual data that is there. So we are setting the offset and making sure that it is aligning to that. So those are some of the things that we do, because it's impossible with every city. There will be a little bit of an offset because of how the imagery is getting updated every single time, depending on which city is updated first and everything. So we will have a little bit of a confusion with offsets, but we always make sure we let the community know that we are setting the offset for that particular imagery, and letting them know which year of the imagery are we using and which one are we using. So we usually mention that in the sources.
So I think one more, I'm adding to what you said, right, Purnima, is also the GPX traces. So oftentimes, if we have GPX traces and there are a lot of community members, so we try to use GPX traces as the source of truth because a lot of times community members do upload these GPX traces. So we also like try to offset it based that. And I think Stephen, that was your next question, right? So set the offset basis the Maxar or HD imagery. Um, Ideally, yes. Most of the times, when the most of the data is traced, it's using that imagery, and community usually follows. And also look out for source. Like sometimes when people are adding data in the note section, they usually end up saying that use this offset or like point 0.4 offset or something when you are mapping here. So you need to be very cautious. But I think a standard practice that I think we personally follow is that in case there are multiple images and none of them are matching, we try to refer to GPX traces that are uploaded either by us or by the community, and see whether if it is working through that, and if it is not, then ideal practice is to like try to see like once we set that satellite imagery according to that offset and see whether it all matches, then we go ahead. But if there is an issue with that, then we reach out to the community members and share about it, and we will have an idea as to if there's a standard practice that they follow. Does I hope Stephen, that helped you with the question. And I think there was another question which was asked, for lines and areas, what is the level of accuracy we should aim for? That is the level of detail or resolution, especially an issue for irregular line feature or land cover areas.
Um,
Purnima?
yes. So, like as much as we follow in terms of accuracy, we always usually go for the highest accuracy we can achieve for each of the feature. But sometimes, irregular features of land, you can't do that 100% level of accuracy. So, how much ever it is possible, make sure that it's accurately seen on what the imagery is seen or how the feature is actually built. But how much ever is maximum you can achieve with that whenever you're mapping is always preferred.
All right.
I hope that answers. Okay.
All right. And I think, Stefan, just to add, right, I think when it comes to land use, we try to be, as Purnima said, as accurate as we can, but it's all right to, I mean, we try our best to be as accurate as we could. All right. These were great questions. Thank you so much, Stephen, for them. And right now, I just want to give an update on the poll. We have two people, or 66% of folks who've mapped on OSM, and then there's one for 33% who is not mapped on OSM. That's interesting. I'll keep the poll on for a little more time and see if the thing changes.
Awesome. So, all right. So I think we've covered a little bit of basics of how to map on OpenStreetMap, just the attributes level. But we do know that we just covered the fact that satellite imagery is not enough to add certain features or to map with accuracy, because there's no way for us to confirm certain things that are present on the road, especially with navigation attributes like turn restrictions, with one ways. It's impossible to tell that from satellite imageries, and that is where the street level imagery comes into picture. And with KartaCam, it's very, very useful whenever we have actually gone and taken the images of the street. We actually get a lot of ideas to how what attributes are we finding there. And since it's KartaCam, it's obviously you have an OpenStreetMap account. You can directly load your images onto OpenStreetMap account, and it's easier to access it from here. So when you want to enable the street level imagery, you can go to map data option or the shortcut which is F, and then you should be able to see the photo overlays option right here when you go above, right? So you also have another open source mapping street level map imagery, that is Mapillary, and you have OpenStreetCam, which is the KartaCam at this point. And you also have a way to filter out the imagery. So what we usually do is we prefer the most recent imageries, like probably like 6 months or 7 months or a year, so that we can have the most recent imagery to deal with, and you can filter it out based on that. But there are certain cases when the recent imagery is not available, then you don't have to filter it out and you can use whatever is there. But if it's too old, then we prefer not to use that imagery, mainly because there's a possibility that so many things would have changed by then, and we can't, since some of us are remote mappers, we don't have any way of going to the place and confirming it by ourselves, which is probably the best thing to do whenever you're mapping locally. Is if you do not have the option for imagery, we prefer to go by and do some field work and check it for ourselves before we add on to the map. But since that's not possible for a lot of us, we usually depend on the most recent imagery that's available. Okay, just a second. I don't know why this is not loading.
Poonam, do you also want to like show how to, just give an idea on data? Yeah, just
Yes.
check and uncheck. Yes.
I think it's a little slow, but yeah, it usually loads in some time. You can make sure that you have at least one imagery on, so that it takes lesser time to load. And, should be able to see the trial in some time. Yeah. So once you've checked the photo option that you think is the source that you want to use, either Mapillary or KartaCam, you should be able to see the images start loading onto the map. It'll take some time, mainly because this is a web editor and it's a little slow, but it's okay. So once you're actually having the imageries load, you can see the trial. And this is also a really good source to compare with the satellite imagery and the offset, mainly because these are GPS trials by itself with the photos, right? So you know exactly where the roads are. So you can actually use this itself to match the offset that you are finding in satellite imageries. So in this case, you can see that with imageries, you can find that there is a road that's going over here, which is not mapped, or it's not found on the data. So by clicking on the imagery, you should be able to confirm that particular existence of the road as well. So I can see the road, and then I move ahead to check the entire trial of the imagery, and you can see how the road is, or what are the other features that you can find in that particular road, or another feature, if there's anything else. And
And no, just another addition, right? Like once you fixed that this is the picture, you can also expand the picture,
yes,
so that you can see it more clearly. You can just drag the screen, so that it looks bigger, and then you can zoom in and zoom out as well. So it helps you like examine the place and see what are the different things or features that are available.
this is usually very helpful if you are mapping POIs. You wish to see the board or the names of the places that you are wishing to map, right? So those kinds of things you can zoom in and check the imagery, and then pan off, go ahead or go behind and try to see which imagery is more clear for you to understand what POI or what feature you're mapping. And you can close the imagery if you're like, and then reopen it again. And then you can see the street name road right here. You can examine if you have anything else written on that board. And then whenever you're mapping, you can use this along with the satellite imagery to actually give you an idea as to where exactly that feature is. And then you can choose the line option, or just use your keyboard shortcut, which is 2, and hover over this particular road to see wherever you can connect, and then you can start tracing.
So I think there's a good question from Nathaniel on this, right? How does this picture feature in OSM compared to stitch pictures like in Google? Nathaniel, I don't know if I understood your question right, but these are also so what we try to do is that these are all stitched as well, like they're trails, and they're not as as continuous as what you see in Google. But these are, we've divided, or rather the whosoever has designed this has divided into pictures because it's easy to monitor frame by frame. But otherwise, if you just play a play button, when you go to KartaView and play the play button, it feels like you're actually filming the whole thing and going, and you don't feel that there's a break. But I just think on OSM we did it frame by frame, or rather the engineers did it frame by frame, so that it's easy for one to understand which frame or which picture it's coming from. I hope that is the question you asked. Purnima, do you want to add anything to it?
No, I think you've actually explained that very well. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, Google Street View is seamless, but again, we as a rule of thumb, right? We don't use any third party or proprietary data licensed software onto adding information on OpenStreetMap. It's just the license part. So we advise that anything like, even if you refer to Google Street View or Google Maps, they like the community prefers not to add that information, because it like it's against Google's license, as well as it's not something which community in OSM accepts.
Yep. And I think one of the other reasons why, like on OpenStreetMap, the play mode is not actually available is because when you actually play the trail, it goes kind of fast in terms of how the entire trial is. But you would want to go to individual images every single time to check a bunch of these attributes when we are mapping. Like especially, we prefer that. That's one of the reasons why on ID at least we don't have that option. So we can actually individually go to images and check what are the other options that's available for us while mapping, so that we have enough sources that we can use to map and make sure that we're adding right data. Right. So we are using, I hope that answers your question. Okay. And so we are using the GPS trial from the images as well as satellite imagery. You can always go and toggle if you do not want the imagery to show up. And just want the satellite imagery. So once that you've confirmed, you just want to see where exactly the road. Then you can adjust it by, you pulling or pushing the white buttons, or you can
Nodes.
the nodes, and you can then go ahead and add the tag to it. So if you are clicking on the option, then you should be able to see the tag over here. And then you can just add highway, and you should be able to see the road that's added right here. And if you wish to add the name, like how we found the name on the imagery, and if you can confirm that, you can go ahead with the map. Enable the imagery again, and then see which road it is. And you can add the name tag, and it will be able to show on. So this actually becomes, having satellite imagery is actually really helpful in terms of the overall picture of how the, like the land is there, or the city is built, or what are the features that's seen, like buildings and, like ground. And that is very helpful in, mapping big features. But certain things, especially with, considering navigation and everything, we have certain features like, accessibility, access tags, private access, one ways, and things like that, which are not seen very clearly on satellite imagery, which is where the street level imageries will become really helpful for us, right? So that's one of the reasons why it's so important to have KartaCam along with satellite imagery to deal with it. So if you can see this particular image, there is another road and there is a barrier right here for that particular feature, which is going inside of an apartment complex or a hotel. And things like this. These are some of the barriers that we think is important to map, especially the gates like this. And these are not seen very clearly on satellite imagery. And that's one of the reasons what we do is, if we are mapping a road, which is another missing service road right here, you can use the imagery, or you can use the satellite imagery and street level imagery to go ahead and map that. And you can actually, add the barrier tags as well using the street level imagery. Oh, sorry.
Also, just another thing, right? When we're looking into what these are smaller buildings, that's why they are pretty accurate. But I will suggest that when you go into maybe the CBD area in Singapore, right, you would see a lot of fluctuation amongst the buildings because the GPX, tends to bounce. So I think that time it is really important to look out for markers. Like for instance, when Purnima saw this particular building, she does that match as to what you see in the imagery, and ensure that those markers are are something that you identify and then add information, because here it's pretty accurate you can do, but whenever and I think you'll face those problems in a crowded area where you tend to, like, it keeps jumping. So it's important you have identifiers that help you see that, okay, this is exactly the place where you are adding information versus otherwise. Another thing, I think there are a couple of questions. Purnima, do we want to take that?
Yes, let me
Okay. So Philip has asked this question. Thanks for the talk. It's great that the KartaView is growing in coverage, but panoramic imagery, which may be quite useful, is still rarely available. What can be done about this gap? Are there any low cost and easy to use panoramic cameras? Philip, thank you so much. This is a great question. Uh, I mean, something that I don't really have an answer for, because I know that yes, there are, like, we do have like panoramic cameras, but they are on the expensive end. But I'm hoping that there are camera companies in the world who are thinking about this and finding it. But yes, in case we find that issue, we would in case we find an alternative, we would love to, like, bring that with the community, and hopefully maybe next time we're talking about how to use a camera of that kind. But at this point, I don't have an answer to it. But I agree that panoramic camera, or popularly called 360 cameras, are very useful, because in the, like, oftentimes, if Purnima, if you can go to ID, like, just to, we can only see a dimension, like a single dimension or single direction as the thing. The coverage is not always like the whole of it. So it would be amazingly beneficial if we have that, such that we get that holistic view. But nonetheless, there are some really great contributors who at their own expense are contributing that feed to the community. But we are hoping that there's something comes up in the future. Thank you so much for that question. And Stephen, I'm glad that your feed, I mean, you lost the feed, but you're back. So thank you so much. All right, I think we have only 10 more, well, actually, to be precise, only 8 more minutes before the session ends. Do we, Purnima, do you have anything else that you want to show, or do we go ahead and, do some do's and don'ts?
Yeah, just one tag out how to add the barrier. So since we are actually seeing this from the imagery, it's very clear that there is like a barrier that we can add, right? So those kinds of information is not available on satellite imagery much. So what we can do is, when we find out that there is a barrier tag or something like that, we can go ahead and mark a point, and you can choose the barrier that's there, so that it's updated. So this is where like features like these kinds of features like gates and one-way access and things like that is very helpful, especially with KartaCam imagery and like street level imagery. And you can see a lot of other barriers or gates or steps that you can see from the imagery. So you can do, like, you can actually map these attributes very clearly and give them which access do they have. Is it like is there a ramp for specifically for wheelchair access or no, and things like that you can verify with the cam imagery, and you can go ahead and add those features very easily. So in this case, we did see a step over here, and the two roads are not connected actually, but it actually is connected with the step. So you can map the steps by connecting the two roads, and then you can change the tag here by adding it highway equals steps. And you should be able to see that rendered on the map. Yeah. So this is exactly what we see when we are actually using both the combination of satellite and street level imagery. You get a lot of idea as to what are the attributes found on the actual road, and will help you map most granular attributes that would help you make the entire experience of navigation better. That is pretty much it. So I think depending on the imagery that you can actually use the imagery to understand the gaps on the map, and you can using the satellite and street imagery, you can actually map missing roads, you can add footways and pedestrian access, You can add steps, cycle lanes. Then you can also add accessibility, like wheelchair equals yes. You can add one ways, because you'll find a board that one way equals yes on the street level imagery. You can add private and pedestrian access. You can add access tags for only buses and cars. You can also add barriers like how we did right now with gates. Turn restriction is a very good image. Turn restriction is a very important attribute for us, and also it's one of the things that you can only identify from a street level imagery and not satellite imagery. And yeah, so before we close for the day, just wanted to ask you this question: which of these options are correct according to you?
I mean, maybe you want to give a little more context.
Yeah, so we just added a little bit of features right now, and I added roads and everything else that needs to be connected. So in that context, if you're adding roads, which of the options do you think is correct? Like, is this correct? Is this correctly mapped? Or is this correctly mapped?
Okay, I'm gonna take a wild guess. I mean, not a wild guess, but a calculated guess. Oh, okay, we have Nathaniel. He said that A is correctly mapped. It has to be connected, right? And yeah, Stephen also says the same.
That's correct. Yes, A is correctly mapped. Even though you're finding one of the roads that you think does not have any connection, you can see a barrier right here in the form of hedges in the parking lot. So you don't have to connect these two roads. But if you see, this road is actually having a valid connection here and here. So this is a routable road. It's correctly connected. But in this case, you don't see any barrier in the road, and you see like a major highway that's passing. So you don't see any connection in this case at all. So this is a little wrongly mapped, mainly because it'll start forming island highways if this particular road is not connected to any other feature on the other side. So especially with satellite imagery, this is the issue that we face if the satellite imagery is not updated. Mainly is this is how we see it when we are mapping, and that's one of the reasons why we have to be really careful and try and see it with the street level imagery as well, to confirm whether this road is connected or not before we go ahead and map it. So some of these confusions you will have to deal with whenever you're mapping on OpenStreetMap, especially with old imagery. All right. Two more questions very quickly. How would you tag this? How would you tag this side on the A, and how would you tag this on the B? So what do you think is the difference between these two pictures?
So I think, Purnima, there was another thing which Nathaniel said, right? That perhaps it might not be completely right or wrong, since there are roads near to highways which are not directly connected.
Yes, it might. There is a chance of that happening as well, and that's one of the things that I mentioned when when you deal with like satellite imagery which is not updated, right? So we will have to check a lot of these things when we assume that this might be correct on our end, or it might not be correct on our end as well, right? So we'll have to check with satellite and street level imagery to find out if there's a barrier over here, and if it's not, then this needs to be connected. But if there is a barrier, then this is also a right edit. So it always depends on like how you're assuming. So there's no straight answer to certain kinds of questions whenever we think that it is easier to map. So you will have to deal with like 2 or 3 sources when you're mapping on OpenStreetMap, and you'll have to check with every single one of them to come up with like a consensus saying that, okay, this is a correct edit and we're going to map ahead with it. So that is the thing that I wanted to highlight with these two questions, mainly because there is no straight answer. When you just look at the image, you do not know which one is correct, because there's no possibility of knowing whether another thing is connected or not, and it might be an assumption like that, right?
Perfect. Yes.
Yeah, so anybody wants to answer this? I mean, how would you tag this and versus how would you tag this, or the difference between these two things? I think we are running out of time, so might as well, I think.
Yeah, you could maybe say the answer and then.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the difference with these things with street level imagery is actually very clear, that this is a sidewalk mainly because there is a road, and it's just like connecting with the road. So we'll tag this as a sidewalk, and this is a footway because there is a physical barrier in the middle, and it's only a pedestrian access. So that's the difference over here with these two images. And yeah, so I think these are the things that we want to highlight from the street level imagery, because it gives us a very clear idea as to what attributes we are dealing with and how they change in terms of tagging. And yep, I think that's it from my side. Thank you so much. And if you do have any questions, please do let us know.
I think we're right on time. Thank you so much, Purnima. And thank you everybody for some really amazing questions. Uh, Nathaniel, I know you have another question, but we are running out of time. But I try to put resources on the doc, as well as you can reach out to us or look out for OpenStreetMap wiki and tags, and you would able to have these fuzzy differences or so. And sometimes it's a call that you make basis the instincts or ground truth. But thank you so much for hearing us. I know 1 hour and on virtual it is really hard, and I'm sure you all have a lot of questions. But happy mapping, and these were some really great interactive questions. So keep them coming. Thank you. Over to
Thank you,
you,
Jana.
Noor.
Thank you, Punima. Thank you for the audience for the webinar. Like for Stefan, I think you miss out a few parts, right? You can watch the replay. Yeah, there's a replay on this website. Yeah. So thank you so much, everyone. We hope to see you again. Thank you.